Roger, give me that gun run. Right along that back, baby. Aim hot. Clear hot.
Ladies, gents, how's it going? Random Gary here, aka Gary Proud. I'm a British Gallantry recipient. I received Britain's second highest award for Gallantry back in 2010, something called the Conspicuous Gallantry Cross, and I have been reacting to acts of gallantry in some military videos online. Today I'm no longer dodging bullets. I'm a civilian now. I now dodge copyright claims on YouTube. That is my biggest concern at the minute. So here today we have a greatly requested reaction video from myself. This is Audie Murphy, the famous American actor, Medal of Honor recipient. Hope you enjoy it. Fingers crossed this one doesn't get striked. Let's watch it now.
It's the closing days of the Second World War, and despite defeat being a near certainty, the German army is still fighting ferociously, forcing Allied troops to pay for every inch of territory with their blood. Just outside the Vosges Mountains, an American infantry platoon is under heavy assault by a well-coordinated and armed German advance. Several M10 tank destroyers are lending their fire to the battle on the American side, but
Intense. Are they Wolverines, M10 Wolverines, are they? Or was that the M18? My understanding was open top turret, very vulnerable to dismounted troops, very effective against tanks, as you would imagine it being an anti-tank gun. But my understanding is fairly lightly armored. I don't think it was greatly armored, but an open top as well. I wouldn't be a fan of being an M against dismounts.
one by one, they are hit by German Panzerschrecks and anti-tank munition, forcing their crews to abandon the vehicles. Amidst the chaos, one soldier sees that his men are about to be overrun, and he immediately orders them to make a break for the woods behind them. To cover their retreat, the soldier leaps up and rushes to a burning tank destroyer, hopping atop it and manning the 50 caliber machine gun, standing alone against a horde of oncoming Germans.
You're exposed as well, and another thing I think that's easy to not understand is whenever you're firing a 50 caliber, it is such a big weapon system. It takes a lot to be able to move it, even if it's pintle mounted. The noise it makes, the way it bucks and sends you on a ride. You have to focus a lot of attention on that. That means that your peripheral vision is probably closed down. You can't really hear where the rounds are coming from to a great degree. It removes quite a lot of that situational awareness you have without it. So it leaves you in quite a vulnerable position whenever you're top mounted on one of these machine guns.
Just 2 years earlier, Audie Murphy found himself being rejected for military service by first the Army, and then the Navy, and finally the Marine Corps. The 5'5" would-be soldier was too short and underweight. The military
Too short. I think I'm 5'7". I almost didn't get into the military because I was very underweight whenever I first applied. I only weighed 7.5 stone. I was a skinny little bloke. I was working in a gym in Belfast, and I was big into my running, massively into my running. And the military's thought was because he's so small, he's only 7.5 stone, he won't be able to carry weight. I was one of those freaks who could put weight on my back, and I was still a bit of a mountain goat with it, so I could really cover ground really effectively. Being short, being slight, I could cover ground quite effectively. And it's a really strange one because I've seen some really big blokes struggle with weight, and I've seen some really short and small blokes absolutely breeze across it. One of my mates, 5 foot tall, military cross recipient, he was very similar. I actually had two people who were 5 foot in my regiment, and both of them were in the highest regards of soldiers and that ability to cover ground with weight on their backs. So yeah, it was It was a real lesson. Actually, one of the guys, his dad was a para. He was para qualified from 29 Commando. Everybody in my regiment's going to know exactly who I'm talking about right now, and to be able to pass those courses. Not only did he pass those courses, he was also the regimental sergeant major of 29 Commando Regiment at 5 foot tall. Unbelievable. I think it says a lot about somebody whenever they go on to be a sergeant major with that small stature in an organization. It's all about being big, tough, and macho, isn't it? You know, whenever somebody that small is able to make it that far, they know their stuff.
doctors all said. Plus, to boot, he was too young, only 16 years old. Yet there was a war on, and the pain of Pearl Harbor was still deeply felt by Murphy and most Americans. Plus, the U.S. had just suffered crushing defeats in the Philippines. Murphy wanted to fight, and he wasn't going to stop trying to enlist until he was allowed to. Faking his birth certificate with the help of his sister, Murphy was finally accepted into the Army on the 30th of June, 1942. Taunted for his short stature, Murphy nonetheless immediately proved a very capable soldier, earning his marksman badge with rifle component bar. And
is that just a range qualification? We have a marksman qualification on our annual personal weapons test. You get little cross rifles, but nobody puts it on really. If I'm honest, it's just seen as a bit of a well done, you shot well, but we don't get medals for it.
Expert badge with bayonet component bar. Graduating from basic training, Murphy was sent overseas to the Mediterranean theater, acting as a platoon messenger in Algeria, while the Allies trained for their upcoming assault landings on Sicily. Weeks later, Murphy found himself on a speeding landing assault craft, plowing through the stormy seas with swells several feet high. A freak summer storm had sprung up overnight, preventing the landing of paratroopers meant to strike the German defenders from behind and ease the pressure on the landing sites. The weather was so bad, however, and the sea so violent, that the German commanders relaxed their defenses, thinking no Allied commander would be insane enough to risk amphibious landings in such extreme wind and rain. Yet from out of the gloom and the howling wind, there suddenly came the thunderous booming of battleship batteries, raining death down amongst the German defensive positions. And just behind the fiery onslaught were lines of...
This is one of these occasions where pre-fires probably alerted the enemy to an assault coming in. Yeah, it was quite a routine we got ourselves into. I think it came off the back of the First World War. You would have pre-fires, and then you would have this thing called the last safe moment. So the troops would get closer and closer and closer, and what was deemed as the last safe moment was where we were starting to take casualties from our own barrage of artillery, so the guns would lift. And what we found was that the enemy were sitting in cover. They were as deep in the cover as possible, and then the second that the fire was lifted, they would all get up and man their posts. So you were almost sending out a warning that our troops are about to land. We're lifting the fire. You just had to calculate it enough that they didn't quite have enough time to get up and man their defenses before our troops had already taken the initiative and taken that initial piece of ground. So yeah, it's something that we rehearse quite a bit within my job, that last safe moment, calling in the fire to land, that specifically the moment where your troops are breaking through into the enemy defenses and you're not going to take any casualties from your fire being a little bit late.
Allied landing craft, bringing 150,000 soldiers into the soft underbelly of Axis-held Europe. Murphy...
I didn't know that. 150,000. The British Army, I think, is 73,000 in strength at the minute. Probably more of a defence force than we are of an army.
Hit the beach with his men that day, and while on a scouting patrol, came across 2 fleeing Italian officers, which he shot and killed. Having survived the violence of the initial landings, though, a severe illness sidelined Murphy, and he was forced into a field hospital for a week. Rejoining his unit, he was then sent to Salerno, landing near Battipaglia, where he and 2 other soldiers were ambushed by a German unit. Their withering barrage immediately cut down one of the soldiers, leaving Murphy and another soldier alone against a squad of 5 Germans firing at them from a fortified position. Responding with hand grenades and their own machine gun fire, Murphy and his comrade killed all 5 Germans, sadly too late to save the injured soldier's life. 1 month later, Murphy joined in the assault against the Volturno Line, the southernmost line of German defenses meant to slow down the Allied assault into...
So my grandfather was out in Italy at this point, moving up towards he ended up he was at Monte Cassino and all sorts. He was in North Africa, across into Italy, and I think it's kind of underappreciated just how severe and how entrenched some of the fighting was in Italy. It was quite a tasty kind of place to operate, and also the Italian partisan forces. Surprisingly, there were a lot of Italians who rebelled against the Italian military and supported the Allies. I've actually got a photo of my uncle Bill, who was in the special boat. They were special boat section back then. He then was amalgamated into the Special Air Service. I'll put up a picture of him with the Italian partisan forces. It was in 1943. He was on the run in Italy. He escaped as a prisoner of war. So yeah, I think it's underappreciated just how many Italians did support the Allies and assisted them as they fought through Italy.
Italy. There, Murphy and his men repelled a counterattack by 7 German soldiers, killing 3 and taking 4 prisoners. For his leadership and excellence on the battlefield, Murphy received a promotion to sergeant, only to be promoted just 1 month later in January 1944 to staff sergeant, still only 19 years old. Hospitalized with malaria, Murphy was out of action for a week and a half before rejoining his...
Right, I'm starting to feel a lot of kind of similarities between me and Audie Murphy. My pals in the military will tell you they knew nobody who hurt themselves as much as I hurt myself in the military. I was, if I wasn't away on tour, I was always broken and sick, and I had this habit of breaking myself. I believed that my body wasn't capable of what my brain believed I was capable of, so there was quite a few occasions where I physically hurt myself in the military. I ruptured my spleen. I gave myself a hernia. I tore my shoulder. I broke my leg, which was my big bad one at the end. I'm sure there's other stuff. The spleen was a really bad one. I almost died. I spent 10 days in intensive care with it. I was bleeding out on a number of occasions, but yeah, I'm hearing the story of Audie Murphy, and I'm feeling care for the guy, because he's broke himself as much as I have. Yeah, all of you who slag me in my regiment, not really slag me, but took the mick out of me. Yeah, you see? It's not just me.
The First Battle of Cisterna, a disastrous American defeat that saw the loss of over 700 U.S. Army Rangers. As U.S. forces licked their wounds, Murphy found himself taking shelter in an abandoned farmhouse along with his unit. Suddenly, a German panzer discovered their position, and Murphy crawled out alone on his belly, drawing close enough to destroy the tank with rifle grenades.
No.
For his incredible heroism, Murphy was awarded the Bronze Star with V device. Months later, Murphy...
I need somebody to tell me about that grenade, because I thought they were fragmentation grenades, and my understanding is Panzer, heavily armored, it would take a shaped charge. So what was it? Was it a bazooka he dropped it with? Was it a rifle grenade, which I just couldn't see. I couldn't. And yeah, what was the range of them? Because thinking if you're using a rifle grenade, it's something that has to be heavy enough with a shaped charge on it to defeat a Panzer, how close must he have been to it? Couple of questions there. Please write below. I'll get it pinned to the top so everybody else can understand just what it took to take out a Panzer with a rifle grenade.
Found himself once more on a landing craft, being tossed around the choppy seas as he sped to shore on the south of France. The Normandy invasion had been successful, and Allied forces from a now defeated Italy would join in the retaking of France by catching the Germans between a northern and southern invasion, squeezing the Nazis back into Germany.
That's something I'm going to have to read up on. I was unaware of any kind of coastal assault on southern France. I thought that there wasn't really any Nazi kind of full-on occupation on the southern coast. Yeah, shame on me. I should know about that.
Under heavy fire, the landing craft hit the beach, and men rushed forward to destroy the German defenders, firing down on them from fortified bunkers. As the invasion force pushed out of the beaches, Murphy and his platoon found themselves picking their way through a beautiful French vineyard. A surreal moment of peace and calm amidst the incredible violence raging all around them. However, the peace was quickly shattered as German infantry opened fire on the Americans, wounding and killing several. Murphy's squad's machine gunner had been detached from the rest of his unit and desperately in need of some heavy suppressing fire. Murphy braved a storm of bullets to retrieve the weapon, and then incredibly rushed back into the fray and began returning fire, killing 2 German soldiers. Suddenly, the German fire slacked off and stopped, and 2 German soldiers left their position inside a house with their hands up, appearing to surrender. Murphy's best friend responded and approached the soldiers, ready to take them prisoner, when suddenly Germans hiding inside the house opened fire, killing him instantly. In a fit of rage, Murphy stormed the house completely alone as the Germans poured fire in his direction. Incredibly, Murphy avoided being hit, and armed with only his rifle, killed 6 Germans, wounded 2, and took 11 prisoner. For his and...
Can I just say, having that happen to you, and then go to assault and still come out with prisoners, I think that's a huge indicator of the man he was. It would have been very easy to go in there and not to take prisoners, wouldn't it? You're talking about the basics of military rules there. White flag, somebody going forward to accept the surrender, and they get shot themselves. It'd be very easy to lose your ethics and your morals and to not take prisoners. For him to come out there with 11 prisoners, significant.
his men's heroism that day, and in the following days, Murphy and his unit received the Presidential Unit Citation. Murphy's seemingly invulnerability, however, came to an end when on the 15th of September 1944, he was wounded by a mortar blast, shrapnel cutting deep into his heel. Just a few weeks later, though, Murphy was back in action and would earn a Silver Star for assaulting a German machine gun position, killing 4 and wounding 3. Just 3.
It's very rare you get soldiers injured on the battlefield and they manage to deploy again. My uncle Bill, who I showed a picture of earlier in this year, he had a bit of a story that he told us about him in North Africa, and it was my first real experience of hearing about how severely injured these soldiers could be and able to get back out on the ground again. I think, yeah, I wonder if we would have turned our people back out again, given the severity of the Second World War. I wonder if we had experienced that in modern times, if we would have been able to turn them around, and if we would have had the hunger to get back out to, I suppose we would have. I think we're different generations fighting different wars, but ultimately we're the same people underneath it. I think so. I think members of the armed forces today, we have the same characters who are just like Audie Murphy. We just need those extreme circumstances for them to come to the surface.
3 days later, engaging the Germans at Lumay in the Clure River Valley, Murphy and his unit found themselves unable to take a heavily defended hill from their German defenders. Crawling alone forward toward the German position, where he could get a better vantage point, Murphy directed his men in their assault via radio, even while Germans rained machine gun and rifle fire down on him for over an hour. After successfully taking the hill, Murphy earned a bronze oak leaf cluster for his Silver Star and a battlefield commission to second lieutenant. Joining the assault into the heart of France, Murphy and his platoon were ambushed by German snipers on the 26th of October. Picking his way from cover to cover, Murphy managed to make his way right up to the German position, taking 2 of the soldiers prisoner, while suddenly a 3rd sniper shot him in the hip. Spinning on his attacker, Murphy leveled his rifle and put 1 round directly between the sniper's eyes. For his injury, Murphy received his first bronze oak leaf cluster for his Purple Heart, but partial loss of his hip muscle due to the removal of gangrene from the wound forced Murphy out of combat until January. By that time, though, the Allies were pushing the Germans steadily back and out of France. Joining his men at the Colmar Pocket in the Vosges Mountains near central France, Murphy and his men found themselves in the thick of some of the most brutal fighting of the war. Determined to force the Allies back into the sea, a fierce German counterattack broke on the U.S. lines like a storm. Caught out in the open, Murphy called for any fire support available to prevent the Germans overrunning their position. A detachment of M10 tank destroyers responded and immediately began engaging the Germans. However, German fire quickly began eliminating the vehicles one by one. Firing from a hastily prepared defensive position, the blast of a Panzerschreck striking an M10 just feet away rolled over Murphy. Knowing his men would be killed to the last if they remained out in the open, Murphy ordered his men to make a break for the woods behind them. Remaining at his position alone, he fired at the oncoming Germans while also directing artillery fire over the radio. Murphy knew he needed to lay down some heavy suppressing fire if his men were going to have any chance of making it to safety, but he was armed with only his M1 rifle. That's when Murphy spotted the 50 caliber machine gun atop the destroyed M10, and ignoring the flames, smoke, and incoming German fire all around it.
Back in the day, we used to have something called the BK's thumbprint, the battery captain's thumbprint, and basically what they would do is they'd dip their thumb in the mud and they'd plant it on a map, and they'd put this stamp on the map, and they'd basically say our guns are about here. So if your placement of the guns, if where you're sighting your guns, if that grid isn't precise, that means that the coordinates that you give to them to fire upon, that isn't going to be as accurate. And basically what that means is their first set of rounds that come into the air and land on the ground, there could be a huge variation of where they initially land. You don't have GPS. You don't have the ability to create firm map detail for you to really position your guns, for you to really give an accurate grid reference. So it's quite difficult being able to adjust artillery in those kind of circumstances, and to do that as a single person, whilst these vehicles are cooking off around you, and vehicles cook off noisily. Also, whilst the enemy forces are pushing you. It's huge. It's huge. It's unimaginable just how complex and how much is going on, and he's still being able to operate at that level. Superb.
Murphy made a mad dash for the burning wreck and crawled atop it, manning the heavy machine gun and laying down a withering barrage of fire at the oncoming Germans. For over an hour, Murphy stayed atop the burning vehicle, returning fire against the Germans and advancing vehicles. The mighty 50 caliber machine gun, nicknamed Modus by US forces, belched out high-speed death, shredding even the armor of the German vehicles. Wounded in both legs and finally out of ammunition after over 60 minutes of fighting, Murphy finally left the burning wreck and crawled his way back to his men in the woods behind him. Having killed and wounded 50 Germans and knocking out several German vehicles, Murphy ignored the wounds to his legs and led his men in an assault to repel the German counterattack, pushing the enemy back and securing the US position. On guard against a second counterattack, Murphy refused to be evacuated to a field hospital and remained with his men as his wounds were treated. For his heroism that day, Murphy was awarded the US military's highest decoration, the Medal of Honor, given only in the most extreme cases of gallantry.
How many times has this guy earned the Medal of Honor? I think somebody commented in one of the sections before there's been nobody awarded 2 Medals of Honor. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but wow, sounds like he earned multiple. Unbelievable. He should have received the Medal of Honor just for his attitude, just for sheer determination, not across individual events, but across multiple events.
Gallantry and heroism. His wounds proved to be too great to rejoin the fighting this time, however, and Murphy was moved from the front lines to regimental headquarters to act as an Army liaison officer, a well-deserved rest for an incredible soldier. Audie Murphy would ultimately become one of the most highly decorated soldiers in US history, and even earned several awards and citations from the French and Belgian governments for heroism. Unable to continue service due to his injuries, Audie left the military at the end of the war and began a very successful career as a Hollywood actor, starring in several films featuring his own exploits in combat. Sadly, Murphy would go on to be killed in a plane crash on the 28th of May 1971, though his body would be interred in Arlington National Cemetery, where it remains one of the most visited graves.
What can you say? I am blown away. I knew a bit about him. I had no idea just how many times wounded in action, how many times he had taken the initiative, he had taken the fight to the enemy, and he had created battle-winning, momentum-changing moments. What an incredible person. I'm going to go away and watch that film now. He starred himself in a movie. I'll put the movie in the comment section. My medication's messing up with my brain. I can't remember the name of the movie right now. But thank you to those of you who recommended Audie. I've done a video on myself. I'm not sure. I don't think I like it. It's uploaded and all. I don't know if I'm going to publish it, but I do need to tell you somehow how I got my award. I think it's only right that I tell you. I'll have a little bit of a think about it. I might need to redo it. I'm just not convinced it's the right means, it's the right message. Sorry, I'm waffling on. I'm talking about something that you just haven't seen, you just have no idea about. Anyway, guys, thanks for the likes, thanks for the comments, and I hope to see you in the comment section. I'll see you soon. Goodbye.